As a journalist, we have an important role in sharing the truth with the world, in exposing corruption, in documenting history for the world to see. But there are journalistic ethics, and paying terrorist affiliates for photos who may have even taken part in a massacre is not journalism. It's aiding and abetting terrorism. I'm appalled to see that sources like AP and Reuters have enabled and even rewarded Gaza-based journalists who were at the scenes of the kidnappings and massacres of Israelis on October 7th. A new report from Honest Reporting has revealed that at least 4 journalists in Gaza were paid by major news sources for their photos, which prove that they were at the scene of the attacks and indicate that they had prior knowledge of the massacres. Hassan Etzliah, who freelances for CNN, illegally crossed into Israel with the terrorist without a press vest or gear. He photographed himself in front of a burning tank. Yusuf Masood, a freelancer for the New York Times, did the same. And here is Etzliah, pictured with Hamas terrorist leader Yahya Sinwar. Ali Mahmoud and Hatem Ali, who both freelance for AP, were conveniently located at the scene of the kidnappings of Israeli civilians. All of this raises the question, why were they there? Did they take active part in the massacres? Did they know what was going to happen? And most importantly, why did CNN, AP, Reuters, and the New York Times think that it was acceptable to pay individuals who clearly were involved with the terrorist organization Hamas at the time of the massacre? You cannot call yourself a journalist and also be part of a terrorist organization carrying out a massacre. Shame on the sources which unethically hired individuals known to be affiliated with Hamas. This is simply lazy, irresponsible journalism. Day 34 of the war in Gaza finds the IDF now in military control, above ground, in the northern half of the terrorist enclave. The IDF has managed to end rocket fire into Israel from the northern half of Gaza and is running a humanitarian corridor for tens of thousands of Gaza civilians fleeing south. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Evidence of Hamas' loss of control in northern Gaza sees tens of thousands of Gazan civilians using the humanitarian corridor established by Israel to flee south for their safety. Until now, Hamas kept most civilians in the northern part of Gaza at gunpoint, using them as human shields. Hamas is no longer able to prevent the mass exit, and the IDF is guaranteeing their safety during designated hours on certain routes.
ראינו היום כיצד 50,000 עזתים עוברים מצפון רצועת עזה לדרום רצועת עזה. הם עוזבים כי הם מבינים שחמאס איבד שליטה בצפון עזה, ובדרום בטוח יותר, יש אזור בטוח יותר שאליו מגיעים תרופות, מים ומזון. הם מבינים זאת היטב.
The IDF made clear that there is no ceasefire or humanitarian pause in the fighting. The Air Force is pounding Hamas from the air, destroying terror tunnels and eliminating top Hamas officers.
אין הפסקת אש. תשמעו, אין הפסקת אש. אנחנו נלחמים בחמאס. אין הפסקת אש. הציבור של חמאס בורח מהצפון, מהדרום, כי הוא מבין שחמאס משתמש בו כמגן אנושי. אנחנו לא נלחמים באוכלוסיית עזה, אנחנו נלחמים בחמאס, שמחזיק חטופות וחטופים שלנו, שעשה פיגוע רצחני ב7 באוקטובר, בו אנחנו נלחמים, ואותו אנחנו צריכים לפרק, ובאוכלוסייה בעזה, שיודעת שחמאס מנצל אותה.
On the 13th day of the ground invasion, the IDF captured a major Hamas stronghold, and the terrorists now are unable to fire rockets into Israel from northern Gaza. The Nachal Infantry Brigade captured a Hamas stronghold known as Outpost 17 in West Jabalia after 10 hours of fighting, first above ground and then inside terror tunnels. Dozens of terror operatives were killed during the fighting. Israel's ground forces in the Gaza Strip continue efforts to locate and disable Hamas' vast tunnel network beneath the enclave. Troops from the combat engineering forces have found and destroyed some 130 tunnel shafts in Gaza in the 13-day ground operation. The military says it has also killed several Hamas operatives in strikes on anti-tank and rocket-launching positions. Thousands of Palestinians are now staying in a tent city growing in southern Gaza. Nearly two-thirds of Gaza's 2.3 million residents are internally displaced as a result of the Hamas-initiated war.
The IDF yesterday released several shocking videos revealing how Hamas uses ambulances and hospitals. ILTV's Devo Klein has the latest.
The IDF has officially released footage from the interrogations of multiple Hamas terrorists who exposed how the terror group uses hospitals, mosques, schools, and ambulances to carry out terror activities.
شو المحل اللي اليهود ما بقصفوا أبداً؟
المستشفيات.
يعني وشو العلاقة بين المستشفيات والانفاق هذه؟
المستشفيات أغلب المصايب بتخبوا من المستشفيات.
بخبوا إيش؟ تحتها يعني؟
فيش مثلا الشفا فيها طابق بودرة، ممكن في البودرة. شفا كبيرة.
أوكي.
مش صغيرة الشفا تبعها.
أكيد.
في بتخبوا.
بتخبوا في شيء؟ الكبار يعني الأغراض.
In recorded calls, the terrorists also admitted that ambulances are used to transport weapons and terrorists, and that they even have their own ambulances which freely transport Hamas operatives. Under international law, use of such civilian facilities is a war crime that endangers the safety of civilians in the vicinity, which is part of the reason there are many reported casualties in Gaza. As the war against Hamas continues, the revelations from these interrogations provides further evidence of the complexity of the war and the cynical human rights violation of the Palestinians by Hamas.
On the diplomatic front, Qatar is reportedly mediating efforts to free up to 15 hostages held by Hamas in Gaza in exchange for a 1 to 2 day so-called humanitarian pause in fighting. This, as the U.S. is voicing its view on who rules Gaza after the war. More from ILTV's William Sharon.
The Qatari efforts to broker a partial hostage release in exchange for so-called humanitarian pause in fighting. Efforts are reportedly ongoing and involving Egyptian and U.S. cooperation. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insisted that there can be no pause in fighting in Gaza without the release of hostages, though he did not say how many hostages would be required. Israel opposes the U.S. push for humanitarian pause in Gaza that isn't preceded by Hamas agreeing to release the hostages from Gaza Strip. Israel has yet to receive any information on the well-being of some 240 hostages held by the terrorists. Meanwhile, Washington has spoken out regarding the future of Gaza after the war, with temporary IDF presence and eventually return of a Palestinian rule.
Prime Minister Netanyahu talked about an indefinite period where they would be on the ground. I think he was referring to the idea, the fact that in the immediate aftermath of conflict, it's certainly plausible that for at least some period of time, Israeli Defense Forces are still going to be in Gaza to manage the immediate aftermath and the security situation. But that nothing's changed about our view that that shouldn't be the long-term solution, that it shouldn't be about an IDF reoccupation of Gaza as a long-term governance solution.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that Israel will have to maintain a military presence in Gaza for an indefinite period of time.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple.
Well, as Israel continues the war against Hamas, another war is being waged against Jewish communities around the world. Joining us from Los Angeles to speak about this dangerous phenomenon is board-certified plastic surgeon and the star of the Emmy-nominated Netflix series Skin Decision, Dr. Sheila Nazarian. Dr. Nazarian, thank you so much for being with us today. Just to start, can you tell us a little about what the Jewish community is feeling on the ground in Los Angeles?
I think the feelings, just like anywhere else in the world, kind of wax and wane. We go from shock to depression to unity to, trying to find strength and strengthen each other. So I think, as you can expect, emotions are kind of all over the place right now, and everybody's just trying to do the best they can to help Israel.
Now, what has been the reaction from the police in Los Angeles? We know there was an incident where an elderly man actually died as a result of the assault from pro-Palestinian protesters. What has been the response from the police?
I think the police have been actually very supportive. I've received messages from friends that I have within the LAPD, just reaching out and seeing how I'm doing and just touching base. And I think that the police in general have been incredibly supportive, and I'm always thankful to our saviors in blue.
Now let's talk about campuses a little bit. There's been quite a few videos coming out harassing Jewish students, in some cases violent assaults. What should these universities be doing to combat this security risk?
Emily, I think this is the most important issue that we in America should be dealing with right now. Israel's going to win this war. Israel can take care of itself. I have no doubt that the war on the ground in Israel is going to be successful. What we need to do in America is take our universities back. This has been a 20, 30-year long-term effort by people on the wrong side of this issue with incredible funding coming in from Qatar. I just read that $1.4 billion has been given from Qatar to just Cornell University. So these people are opening up these Middle Eastern studies departments and funding the hiring of these horrifically unethical and shameless activists, basically, not even professors, who are indoctrinating and poisoning the minds of our youth. I read another stat that 50% of college students actually side with Hamas. I mean, what level of misinformation, lies, and indoctrination has to go into our university systems to make 50% of college students hate America and Western values so much that they side with a terrorist organization and actually condone the actions, excuse the actions, and try to contextualize the actions? What we need to do is we need to hold the universities accountable. We need to fire the professors that are behaving this way. The students that are here on visas to get education in America and are showing support for Hamas needs to be shipped back and have their visas revoked. And we need to send a clear message to students on campus that the Jewish students, you are safe, you are supported, and that terrorism and siding with terrorism is not tolerated for a millisecond.
Now, we don't have a lot of time, but I just wanted to get your feedback. Now that we have also seen a lot of Hollywood stars, some celebrities, expressing solidarity with Palestinians without really understanding the nature of Hamas, kind of like the students you mentioned. What is your response to this type of both sides are wrong rhetoric that we've seen?
There is no moral equivalency here, period. Anyone like myself or you that have lived in the region and seen it firsthand can tell you there is no moral equivalency. And I think it's very difficult for people in America or people that haven't lived under Islamic extremism and the ideology of Islamic extremism to understand that these people's core values are not the same as yours. You want to think everyone has the same core values. But imagine if I told you someone values death and martyrdom over life. How jarring is that to someone who's never lived there? And it's almost like unbelievable. So they see images, they see memes, they see little quick sound bites, and they think, there's billions of Muslims in the world and only 15 million Jews. How are we going to win this daunting PR war? How are we going to get more content out than they are? And so I really encourage people, before you speak, at least visit Israel, then
Absolutely.
Talk.
Well, we're out of time, but thank you so much for coming on and for all the important work that you're doing to fight back against anti-Semitism and against extremism. Be safe. Thank you.
You too, Emily. Thank you.
Israel continues to make Hezbollah pay a very heavy price for its continuing provocation, hitting terrorist targets in Syria as well as southern Lebanon. The U.S. is also hitting terror targets in northern Syria. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Israeli airstrikes reportedly killed 3 pro-Iranian Hezbollah fighters at the Aqraba military airport near the Syrian capital of Damascus. The strikes were reportedly about 10 kilometers from Damascus International Airport. Israel also reportedly struck Syrian air defense sites in the country's southern Sweda province. Overnight, the IDF struck Hezbollah infrastructure in Lebanon in response to launches toward northern Israel over the past few days. Here, the IDF targets a Hezbollah site being hit north of Bir Anit in northern Israel. The IDF remains on high alert along the northern border, and Israeli communities within 4 kilometers of Lebanon remain largely evacuated. Meanwhile, further north in Syria, 9 terrorists were reportedly killed in a U.S. strike in the eastern city of Deir ez-Zor. 4 missiles were reportedly fired, and the Pentagon confirmed the strike, saying it targeted a weapons storage facility used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and came in response to recent attacks on U.S. forces.
52-year-old Sharon Avigdori and her daughter Noam Avigdori, 12 years old, were kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th from Kibbutz Be'eri. For over a month, they've been held captive in Gaza, along with 5 other family members. Chen Avigdori, Sharon's husband and Noam's father, one of Israel's top comedy writers, is now on a mission to help bring his family home. On October 7th, the last thing he heard from his family was a message that they were under attack. Since then, radio silence. The terrorists burned down the house, and Sharon and Noam are believed to have been taken to Gaza. Bring Sharon and Noam home. Bring all our hostages home. In the days after the Hamas massacre of October 7th and until today, Israel Bonds has been fully mobilized to help the Jewish state's economy at war. Bonds reports its highest surge in investments in its history, raising $1 billion during the war. More on this report.
Since the start of the war with Hamas, Israel Bonds has raised $1 billion of investments globally. With the annual goal of $1 billion in bond investments, Israel Bonds and its affiliates have doubled their global sales to surpass the $2 billion mark. The investment during wartime demonstrates the unwavering and growing support for the State of Israel and its people. This is Israel Bonds' highest surge of investments ever, which demonstrates the strong support for Israel of the Jewish communities and Israel supporters in the United States and around the world. Jews from around the world came forward to be part of the story that is Israel. In those critical early years, Israel Bonds served as a primary organ of the Jewish people in building the basic infrastructure of our young country, and it is no surprise that it is there for us now, helping mobilize world Jewry in immediate and urgent action for the State of Israel. Individual investors all felt that they were personally invested in Israel's future, now more than ever. Our nation and people are experiencing pain and suffering like never before, but we are humbled and gather strength from their resilience and immense fortitude, ensuring all of our solidarity. The increased Israel Bonds investment will be much needed as Israel seeks to rebuild damaged areas of the country after the war. Each investment in an Israel bond provides the nation with impactful and much-needed assistance through financial support that helps secure the future of the State of Israel and its people. More than 15 U.S. states and municipal governments and institutions have shown confidence by investing in Israel bonds since the start of the war. Israel Bonds has now passed the milestone of $50 billion in global investments since the organization's founding in 1951.
Well, at a time of such turmoil, it's inspiring to see the unity and support for Israel growing around the world from Jewish communities. And Israel Bonds is certainly a reflection of that support. Here to speak with us about the incredible work of Israel Bonds is Danny Neve, the president and CEO. Danny, thank you so much for joining us. So $1 billion in investment. $1 billion in investment worldwide since the war started. Who are these investors and why have they decided now to support Israel?
Well, the support for Israel that you can find here in the United States and around the world is really enormous. As you mentioned, we started this special campaign already on that dark Saturday on October 7th. And since that Saturday, in a month, we raised more than $1 billion, which is regularly the annual goal of Israel Bonds, which means that we doubled our annual goal in a month. And if you ask me, where is it coming from? Well, it's coming from thousands of people who support Israel among the Jewish communities, the congregations, and the communities all around the world, by the way, not just in the United States of America. And in addition to that, you can see huge support for Israel that come from local governments, from states like the state of New York, Florida, Texas, Ohio, Illinois, Nevada, so many others. This is a way for them to express their great and strong support for Israel these days.
Now, Danny, are you seeing a lot of new investors during this time?
Definitely. We see many new investors, people that haven't invested in bonds ever or for years. This is a time that people understand that this is not just Israel's most difficult hour probably since 1948. It's also Israel's supporters and the Jewish community's most important hour. And for us, for Israel bonds, investors and supporters, people understand that this is our most important hour to support Israel.
Now, what attracts them to invest in Israel at a time when some might see instability due to war?
Well, people understand that in addition to their willing to support Israel, investment in bonds is a solid investment. You can see that the starting point of the Israeli economy prior to the war is very solid and strong. Our debt GDP ratio is 60%, much lower than the OECD countries' average. People understand that the resilience of the Israeli economy following the war will be very fast and strong. People believe in the state of Israel in all aspects. And you can see that not only by the Jewish communities, as I mentioned, you can see it from financial institutions like those local governments and states, enormous support. And all of them went to have a PR on that and to let the people know about that they support Israel. They see it as a solid investment and a great way to support United States of America best ally.
What is the role of Israel bonds in general, but more specifically, how are your efforts helping in this war?
Well, every dollar that someone invests or any bonds that is purchased by someone all around the world goes straight away to allow the government of Israel the additional huge requirements in terms of the financial the government needs for different kind of important tasks like the emergency organizations, the medical centers, the rehabilitation of those banned kibbutzim over there, and so many other important tasks. You know, we were assigned by our Ministry of Finance and the Accountant General of the State of Israel to raise those $1 billion. By the way, as we speak, it's already $1.2 billion since the war started in terms of our goals. And it's obviously that the government of Israel has huge responsibility to finance all those war requirements and financial needs, and we are here for them.
Has there ever been a time in the past that you saw such a huge surge in investments globally for the state of Israel? And perhaps maybe the most obvious question, how will that $1 billion be spent?
Well, this is Israel bonds probably highest surge of investments ever. And I can tell you in terms of the feelings and how people here in the United States and other places see their obligation, their moral obligation to support Israel, because people understand this is not just a war between Israel and Hamas. This is a war against the enemies of the Jewish people. This is a war against the enemies of humanity and civilization. And people understand that by making investment in Israel bonds today, they support the efforts of the state of Israel to defeat Hamas, for the rehabilitation of the kibbutzim around the border, to support the medical centers, to support all those important needs of the state of Israel facing this difficult war.
Well, we're out of time, but I do want to thank you so much for all the important work that you're doing to fight back against those who are seeking to destroy Israel and, of course, to support the state of Israel in this difficult time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight throughout the country with lows of around 16 degrees Celsius or 62 degrees Fahrenheit. Tomorrow, expect clear skies and rising temperatures set to reach highs of 27 degrees Celsius or 81 degrees Fahrenheit, and last throughout the weekend. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channels, subscribe to our ILTV newsletter, and don't forget to check out our new and improved website, ILTV.tv, with all the latest news from the heart of the State of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.